Okay. Hello. Hello, and welcome to the Cloud English podcast. It is September 6th, 1464. It's great to have you. We have a lot to talk about today. We're going to be talking about our main theme today is music, learning English from, with music. Whether or not it's a good idea, spoiler, it can be, but it depends. And we'll talk through that. We'll talk through some other things we're going to be looking at, inspired by our last podcast, making some songs with things that we're trying to learn, which I think will be fun and interesting. Those here live, say hi, say where you're watching from. Those not, you can catch it every Friday, anywhere between 12 o'clock and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If I'm not mistaken, that's, 5 p.m. GMT? Correct me if I'm wrong there. And what is that? 1 a.m. Beijing Standard Time? Or Beijing time? Something like that. So say where you're watching from. Again, great to have you. We're going to be talking about music today. If you don't mind, right at the beginning, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. That's very important. If you're watching and you want to listen, you can do that. Links in the description. If you're listening, welcome. I love the audio listeners. It can be a better experience, and you don't have to look at my dumb face all the time. But you can watch if you like, and you can do that live every Friday, or you can catch the VOD, I believe they call it, on YouTube or Facebook. In Kurdistan, it looks like it's 7:50 p.m. Juan, hello, and welcome. Again, am I pronouncing your name correctly? It's Jwan, is that right? You play Clash of Clans? Reflection says, I do not play Clash of Clans. I know all about it, but I don't really play it. I don't play a lot of mobile games. The only mobile game I play on a fairly regular basis is Call of Duty Mobile. I don't play it on my phone, though. I play it on an iPad Pro, so it has the high refresh rate, which is great. And I play it with an Xbox controller. So I have a PlayStation 5, but I don't really play that much Call of Duty on my PlayStation 5. I play some Fortnite. I might play a little Borderlands, a little Baldur's Gate. I'm not a huge gamer, but I do enjoy playing. I play with a couple of friends every week, and that's kind of my video game time. And my aspiration in life is to play more video games. By the time I'm 50, I hope to play at least 3 hours of video games per day. That's one of my major life goals. Right now, I'm at about 2 hours, maybe 3 per week, which I feel is not enough. During COVID, when basically it was inconvenient to go anywhere, or they were doing basically full lockdown in New York City, my wife and I really got into playing World of Warcraft together. That was kind of our social time. So I would be in my office. This is when we lived in Queens at the time in a 2-bedroom apartment. She would be across the hall in our bedroom on her computer. I would be in my office where I've recorded many of my courses. If you want to check it out in any of the courses, or indeed old live streams videos, it's the one that has it's got a Nintendo 64 in the background. That is my old office, kind of classic. Anyway, so we used to play together. We would get on a call together. We would play World of Warcraft for hours and hours and hours. Now that's definitely not very feasible because we have a young 1-year-old son. And gaming is not so easy to do as a regular thing when you're parents of a little kid. I'm not complaining, of course. I'm totally fine with that compromise. But we did, when he was very young, he would be sleeping on the sofa, and we would play Diablo sometimes for a few hours. Diablo 4 when that came out, and we beat that whole game. Rubinish, Paul, excited to be here. Thank you. Appreciate it. Reflection, hello, welcome. Everybody, welcome. We're going to be getting into music, and I believe it was Juan who recommended turning language you're learning into music, and I'm going to try it out using Suno this week. We're going to experiment with that a little bit. I haven't checked out SpeakPal, but I plan to. I have that written down, so that is in my list of things to do. I probably won't do it during a live podcast. I'll probably do it as a separate review video, basically. Okay, so anyway, before we get into our first topic, if you haven't done so already, like button, subscribe, and check out the links in the description. You can also get a free course. That's in the links in the description. And you can get 30% off the yearly membership with access to all of the courses that are on my website. So check out the course list first. You can get 30% off the yearly membership paid monthly. So you pay per month. You can cancel any time, but you're getting the price of the annual membership if you were to pay for one whole year, which is cheaper, right? So check that out. It's I think a very good deal. And pretty soon I'm going to be launching a 90-day program, which I'm very excited about. But I'm still working on all of the automations. It's going to have a lot of automations and AI stuff kind of baked into it. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's get into it. If you have any questions, just pop those in the old chat. Okay. A lot of people ask me about using music to learn English, and I think it's a complicated thing because I can't say, yes, do that. It's a great way to learn English, but I also can't say, don't do it. It's a terrible idea. So I think it makes sense for me to talk about what music is good for in terms of language learning, and maybe what it's not good for in terms of language learning. So let's start with what it's not good for, okay? Generally speaking, music, if you're listening to music, if you love music, music is poetry, right, with nice noises. That's what it is, right? And so if your goal is to become a better English speaker with that, there are some problems that you may encounter. One would be, okay, I want to learn how to pronounce English naturally, right? Well, okay, but in music, often singers have exaggerations and say things in ways that don't sound like common speech, you know? The classic Blink-182, I think late 90s, early 2000s, yeah, 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 that sort of sound, right? Well, do they talk like that? Not so much, right? So if you're trying to learn pronunciation through music, you have to be careful. Now, you can definitely find some interesting sounds, I think, and you can learn about the sing-songy way of singing English, right? You can learn about rhythm and things. But if you're trying to just learn pronunciation, there are much more efficient ways to do it. And it's the same for listening. If you're trying to improve your listening, well, half of the English songs out there, I don't understand when I hear them, right? I don't know the lyrics to most songs because I don't understand what the singers are saying because they're singing. They're not speaking clearly, right? So, okay, maybe not the best way to learn pronunciation, maybe not the best way to improve your listening. What about grammar? Again, be careful with grammar. You might find some interesting little phrases here and there or interesting ways to put words together. But if you're using it as a source to learn correct grammar, to take an exam like the IELTS or the TOEFL, well, that's a terrible idea. Why? Because music is poetry. And poetry doesn't follow the same rules as standard prose. Prose language follows the basic sentence structure, often where sentences will be subject, verb, object, SVO. Well, music may follow that sometimes, but because it's poetry, there's a lot more flexibility, repeated words in the chorus, right? And so if you're trying to learn grammar from that, well, that's going to be a little bit difficult to do. So if you are picking up interesting little bits of grammar because you're curious to do that, make sure to check it. Look it up. Maybe use ChatGPT to verify, is this a correct sentence? And again, sometimes poetry just follows very different rules because poetry is all about the sound, right? The rhythm often, the rhyme of the poetry. And it's less about, here's a sentence that you should write down, right, as part of an essay for the TOEFL test. No, it's following different rules. So those are I think some reasons against using music as a learning tool. But I don't think that's the end of the story, because I believe music can be a great portal into the language, a doorway, a gateway drug, maybe? Can I say that? A gateway drug into the English language. If you love certain songs, that's great. If that song is in English, right, you now have a gateway into the language. And that's very important because you love the song, right? So often the problem with language learning is that it's really boring. And so if you can find gateways or windows that you're genuinely interested in, that's going to keep you connected to it. That's going to keep you listening. That's going to keep you learning, right? To keep you curious about it. So if one of your favorite singers sings English songs and you're starting to pick up here and there new words or here and there idioms and phrases, or you memorize the lyrics and you can sing along, well, I think that is valuable. Even if you're not learning, perfect, grammatically perfect language and the pronunciation is not how people naturally speak, well, I think that's okay because you've got this connection now to the language, and that should not be dismissed. I think that's very important, okay? Now, I also think there's I'll give you an example. My son likes to read books, but he likes different books for different reasons. When I read to him, Stack the Cats, 1 cat sleeps, 2 cats stack. No, 3 cats stack, 2 cats play. He likes it because of the images. I think they're very colorful, right? He likes to point at the cat. But when I read Dr. Seuss to him, it's often not about ordinary things like cats. It's about snubs and their gloves. Or what would you do if you met a jaboo, right? What is a jaboo? Who knows? A strange creature that you could meet. So there's often fictional, made-up stuff. You're not really learning much about cats and dogs and numbers, right? But I noticed when I read Dr. Seuss follows a rhythm, usually. It has a particular cadence, right? It's got often rhymes in it. I noticed that when I read Dr. Seuss to him, he's not looking at the book most of the time. He's studying my mouth. He's watching my mouth very carefully. And so what I think he's getting from Dr. Seuss, and there are actually some academic papers to support this that I think I've talked about before, what he's getting is a feeling for the cadence and the rhythm of the English language. Every language has its own music, its own poetry, its own prose, its own thing, right? And there's a broad spectrum in the ways that the music, the language can sound, for example, in music or in regular speech, right? Formal speech, casual speech, that sort of thing. And so you can't say, well, don't learn the music. That's not important. Just learn how to talk. That's not right. You should read literature. You should listen to music. You should read poetry. You should understand formal speech and casual speech. You should learn it all because that's the whole language. You can't isolate one part from another. And so I think the reason he likes to watch my mouth and he's trying to figure out, okay, something's going on there. What's he doing there? And what I noticed recently is that he's starting to try to have rhythm in his speech. He's walking around the house going, he is not saying any words, but I can see that he's kind of getting a sense for something that I think is important, right? When you speak, it's not just about meaning. It's about feeling. It's about expression, right? And that's part of, obviously, a big part of music. Music is poetry set to rhythm, set to instrumentation, right? I also think that with music, you get something deeper. Cultural sense, right? You can understand themes. There's another level of understanding that can happen, which is part of that whole language context thing that I was talking about. So I think that's another good reason. But I would just recommend, if you're planning to actually learn language from music, okay, great. That's what you want to do. It's your favorite song. Fantastic. Look at the lyrics, though, right? Don't just try to understand it by listening. It may take too long. Check out the lyrics. You can find them if you have a physical record, you can find it in the back usually, or you can just look them up. There's a website that we'll look at in a second called, what is it called? It's called Genius, where you can look up songs and try to understand basically the, not just the lyrics, not just the words, but the context, right? So that's useful. And then you can copy certain things and paste them in, maybe little bits, right? Little phrases from a song and paste them into ChatGPT and ask, hey, explain this in this context, right? So I think that's useful. And again, I think you're getting more of that social context. You have that portal or that gateway into the language, which is great. And I think there's also a great way to become part of a community, right? So if you find other people who are fans of the same musician or band or whatever, yeah, you can go to their concerts or you can join an online community of other people who like this band, right? Maybe they have a Reddit page, or you can, I don't know, you can become a moderator on some community. You can do all kinds of things. You can follow them on social media just to connect and socialize. And then again, you have another gateway or portal into the language, and you're interacting with others as part of a community. So you're using language as well, and that can be a good thing. Now, one thing I would like to show you just quickly is how you can look up lyrics. Okay, so you want to learn English with lyrics. Great. Let's go over to Genius, and Genius is a website for looking up lyrics. So you can go to, I'm pretty sure, this website to look up any song. I think I could be wrong. So we've got charts here, and let's just look up. Okay, let's say I love Bad Chem by Sabrina Carpenter. Okay, it's a little small, so let me zoom in a bit. Now, here I can get some background information. Let me close this ad. I can get some background information when I click on different lyrics in the song. In the chorus of Bad Chem, Sabrina sings about the intense physical chemistry between her and her partner with intense imagery. The term bad chem means a strong physical and emotional connection. So you can get this kind of useful background information, which I think is pretty cool. Okay, so now, what if I want to learn a specific word or phrase in more depth? Okay, so let's try to do that. Let's pick out a phrase here. And what are the odds you send me a text What are the odds you send me a text? Okay, so let's now go over to something that I built that you can use, and it's in the links in the description. So if you have a ChatGPT account, you can use it. Let's hop over here. I'm going to open it up. Give me 1 second. I'm going to open up my GPT. The GPT is called, what the heck did I call it? What did I call my own GPT? Oh yeah, Music Lyrics for English Learners. That is what I called it. Okay, so here it is. And all you do is paste in some lyrics, and it will give you a breakdown of the lyrics to explain the language part, right? So let's see how well this works. I'm going to paste in the lyrics I copied, and what are the odds you send me a text? Okay, and let's see what we get. Explanation. The speaker is expressing surprise or amazement that they received a text message for someone, especially when it feels like a coincidence or an unlikely event. Key phrase, what are the odds? This is a rhetorical question often used when something surprising or coincidental happens. It means, how likely is it that this would happen? But it's not meant to be answered. It shows that the speaker is surprised, which is great. And then you send me a text refers to receiving a message from someone via phone. Okay, so maybe we don't need to know that because we probably know what that means, but we can learn what are the odds and maybe how it's used. And then as a follow-up, you can say, give me 2 example sentences using what are the odds naturally. Okay, and then we can kind of learn it in a bit more depth to see some examples. I bumped into my old friend at the airport. What are the odds of that happening in such a big city? Okay, we were both wearing the same outfit to the party. What are the odds? Great examples. So if you look at the first link in the description, you will find this GPT. If you have a ChatGPT account, even a free one, you can use this for free. All you have to do is click on it, paste in a lyric, and it will give you the breakdown. You can dive deeper, ask follow-up questions. Feel free to use it, play with it. A GPT is really just a little tool that you can use for a specific thing. So I would love your take on music. Do you listen to English songs? If so, what type of music do you like? English music do you like? And do you find it to be a good way to pick up pieces of the language, to learn the language? Or do you feel like it's not that useful and you prefer to focus on other things like reading or TV shows or movies or things like that? I'm very curious. If you haven't done so already, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Get a free course in the links in the description. Okay. Manuel is watching from Veracruz. Welcome. For memorization, songs are great, but also we need a natural context besides the song's context to fully understand it. I agree with that. I agree with that. Absolutely. To know how to use it in real life. Yes, 100%. So check out the GPT that I made. I'm making a lot of GPTs. I think people misunderstand what a GPT is. But the real value of it is to condense a set of instructions into a single thing that you can then interact with in a very simple way in the future. So you can just paste in a sentence without any further instructions. That prevents you having to do that every single time. So if there are frequent tasks that you have to do, oh, sorry, I almost spilled my coffee. It's cold. That's okay. If there are frequent tasks that you have to do that are kind of the same, make a little GPT for it, and then you change the GPT over time, improve it, adjust, but you have this great thing that you can easily interact with a click of a button and a quick copy paste. Pretty cool, in my opinion. Pretty cool. Okay. All right. Let's see if we can do this, though. I also want to look at using... I do want to answer this. Let's see. Hold on a second. I'm trying something out here. Oh, yes, we have the pen. So I'm going to do the pen thing because I have it. How can I think in English? There's only one way. Take my course, Building Your English Brain. That course just hit 100,000 students. I'm very proud of that course. I'm actually working on a book version of the course to send to some agents. That's the plan. So, yeah, I'm excited. All right, we're going to do a thing that has nothing to do with music, and then we're going to get back to music. Okay? And I will explain it in a second. I've had trouble with the board, but I've got it today. It's working, and so we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do it now because it's now or never. It's now or never. I answered a question about why Americans say gas, as in the thing you put in your car to make it go, a long time ago. And I wasn't super happy with the answer, so I want to answer it a little bit better now. So why do Americans say gas? Why do Americans say gas? They say, I'm going to go get some gas. I'm almost out of gas. We need to get gas, something like that. Well, first of all, of course, it has nothing to do with gas, as in the state of matter gas. Okay, so solid, liquid, gas, plasma, gas is one of the states of matter. It's not that. Spelled the same, sounds the same, but it's not that. Okay? Now, the word gas actually has a history. It's short for gasoline. Gasoline. Now, gasoline is a product that is derived from, you can call it crude oil. Crude oil is the stuff that comes out of the ground. And it's also called petroleum, which is important. So okay, petroleum. Okay, so you've got crude oil, you've got petroleum. Wait a minute, this isn't spelled with an E, an I. This is spelled with an E, sorry. E, I think it's E-U-M. That's right? Double check me on that. I think it's E-U-M. Yeah. Okay, so gasoline is the name of a product that comes from the stuff that comes out of the ground. It's not the stuff that comes out of the ground. It is a refined product. There are many products that are made with the stuff that comes out of the ground. Crude oil, petroleum, right? A lot of plastics and other things that we use every day are made out of petroleum, okay? Now, this actually was a name that started as something called, I believe, either it's C-A-Z-E-L-I-N-E, a trademark product back in the 1860s, right, that was used, I believe, at first for lamps or something like that. It wasn't cars. There were no cars. But eventually, over time, this became gasoline, but started out as a trademarked product, right, as something like caseline, maybe caseline or caseline, something like that. Okay, so you've got gasoline, and we shorten that because gasoline is a very long thing. We shorten that to gas. It is an abbreviation of the word gasoline, which comes from this. Okay, now what about what other people say? What do other people say? Well, other people around the world, I don't know if it's only Americans or Americans and Canadians. Maybe it's just Americans. Other people tend to say petrol. Now, petrol is not petroleum, to be very clear. I think this is where I wasn't clear when I explained it before. Petrol, the word petrol, is an abbreviated version of the word petroleum. But it isn't petroleum. So it's kind of a weird language thing, right? This word comes from this word. This word is shortened into this word, and that's why people say, I need to put some petrol in the car, right? But once you say that, what you're saying is not, I'm going to put petroleum in the car, because this is just the raw stuff, right? This isn't the thing that you put directly in your car. It has to be refined, right, into a product that you can use, right? So petrol is an abbreviated version of the word petroleum, but petrol and petroleum are not the same thing, which is kind of funny, but that's what it is. Now the question is, are gasoline and petrol the same thing as refined products we put in our cars? And the answer is yes. So gasoline and petrol not petroleum, are the same thing. And both of these things, petrol and gasoline, come from the raw stuff that comes out of the ground, right? This one gets abbreviated as gas from gasoline. This one is abbreviated from petroleum, but is not petroleum. There, I explained it. Hopefully that's clear. This is more for me than for you, honestly. I just wanted to get this out there clearly. I've stated it. Now you know, okay? So that's why when you hear Americans say, I need to get some gas, it's talking about this stuff, okay? And when you hear people say, I need to get some petrol, they're not talking about pumping stuff directly from the ground into their car, but the word does come from that. Hopefully it's clear. Okay, if it's not, please ask questions in the comments. If you haven't done so already, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and get a free course in the links in the description. And my pen worked and everything. Fantastic. Very exciting. Okay. Well, I'm done with that. I've explained that. Hopefully I never need to talk about it again. I can sleep at night now. Juan says another benefit is that we're familiarizing ourselves with many idioms and phrasal verbs quickly. Then if we encounter them, we can recognize them easily. I think that's right, if you can. Although when I listen to music, the lyrics just go straight through my head. I don't really hear them. I generally listen to music without lyrics, although I do like some musicians who sing lyrics. My favorite probably singer-musician, I think, is Sufjan Stevens. He's my favorite musician who sings, and then my favorite musician who doesn't sing is probably Disaster Piece, Rich Vreeland. We pronounce it Kurdish language as gasoline. Okay, gasoline. That sounds more like the original gasoline, right? Things just morph over time. Often K sounds become G sounds because it's a little easier to say. Ga is easier than ka for some reason, because you have to stop the voice and then start the voice again, maybe. So, Manuel, let me just give you, I don't want to not answer your question. How can I think in English, says Manuel. So, it's a common thing. First of all, why should you think? Why should you learn to think in English? Well, I call it building an English brain. And if you just Google building your English brain, you will encounter my course called Building Your English Brain. It's a 3-hour course with over 100,000 students. I'm very proud of it. Anyway, what it's about is solving this problem of when you learn your first language, you're learning it not from another language, right? But from, let's say, the environment as you begin to interact with it as a child. And so your relationship to the words is somehow more immediate. When I say light, somehow me saying light includes every time that I've encountered the word light and the concept behind it, the different meanings of it, this full, rich range of things that kind of are part of this word, light. It's not just a word. It's the word and all of its meaning. But when you learn English as a second language, or you learn any language as a second language, what tends to happen is that you've got your, let's say, here's your, let me kind of try to draw it. Here is your brain. Okay? We're going to label that as B. And here is your native language. You can have more than one native language. For example, my son, he's learning one. And your brain is kind of, this is very rich here. Your brain is using this language in a very interesting way, right? You have this full spectrum of nuanced meaning, and you can understand jokes and references. You can communicate things, articulate things in subtle ways, right? Because there's this rich tapestry of language, structures, pronunciation, puns, all of that stuff. And it's huge. Your whole life, you've absorbed it, and you've interacted with it and used it. But then you go to learn another language. And what tends to happen is that this goes over to this language. Here's the new language. You learn, let's say, a word, one word. Now, this word that you're learning goes through this kind of very thin pipe to your first language. And all of the associations around this new word that you're learning are not from this language that you're learning. And they get attached to it from your first language. So then you have to ask yourself, well, what if all of the new words I'm learning don't have all of the associations? Am I really learning it? And the answer is no. Because the word light, let's say a very simple word, may have that word translated into your first language will have all kinds of associations that it doesn't have in English. And in English, it has all kinds of meanings, associations, and nuances that are not the same as your first language. But when you're translating it from this language to this, all of that is lost. And in fact, it may be even worse because now you're associating a bunch of stuff just naturally because it's being translated to it, which it may not even have, right? And so it's a very inefficient process. And then when you need to use this language, you have to kind of carry this around with you everywhere you go. Okay, I need to use a word, request, use a word. Okay, well, first we must go here and we must request the word. Okay, yes, now we can use it. So you're kind of carrying your native language around with you everywhere you go, translating in your head. It's very clunky and very awkward. And often the problem comes from direct translation, right? You just translated it and learned it that way. Problem. Now, I am in favor of quick translations. Sometimes you need to translate a text just to understand it, right? Sometimes you want to know what a word means very quickly. You want to get a basic translation. Do that. That's fine. But when we're talking about learning a language, learning English, why do you need to involve your first language at all? Set it aside. Pretend you don't know it. Don't use it at all. And instead, go through the process of childhood again with this new language. Associate any new word that you learn only with immediate associations, not associations from your language, immediate associations through your senses, through the context, right? When I first learned any Chinese was in China. I didn't know any Chinese, and so all of my associations, and I decided to do it this way, were immediate. I tried as little as possible to do any translation and build up from there. And so it's often much quicker and easier. And then the more you kind of learn, the more it builds out naturally, right? That's the process of language learning. So instead of doing this, you want that word to go kind of directly over here, And in that way, you're kind of building, it goes from, brain to language. I know that's not really how things work, okay, but this is the idea. It's more immediate, it's richer, it has its own context, it grows and matures and develops over time. And so what happens is you gradually develop what I can call an English brain. And when you do that, and you have two brains, when you're speaking English, you're thinking in English. And when you're thinking in English, you're thinking in English, not going back and forth, right? So that's how you should learn any language. And that doesn't mean you can never translate anything, but the course goes into that, how to learn words, how to watch movies, reading, things like that. So feel free to check it out. But that's kind of to explain why it's important to do that, at least, right? Which it is. It's very important to do. All right. Anyway, we need to be clear about our intentions when listening to a song. Yes, I agree with that. The most important thing is intention. That is often the most important thing. What are your intentions? I suppose we would call that a, what's that called? Deontological, I believe, as opposed to consequentialist. Consequentialist would be you're judged based on what happens, based on what is done. And deontological judges you based on what you meant to do, what you intended to do. So you plant a tree because you want the world to be a more beautiful place, but then it turns out the tree is a toxic tree and it destroys farmland with its roots. Well, are you a bad person because you planted the tree? Even though you meant to do something good, you did something bad. But does the bad thing that happened count against your score, basically, your moral score, your karma? If you're a consequentialist, then it does. If you're a deontologist, then it doesn't. All right. Let's try Suno. Let's try out Suno. I'm going to copy something here. Give me 1 second. So if you haven't played with it, there is a platform called Suno that allows you to make music. It's AI-generated music, and it's pretty good. I've used it for a couple of personal projects. Now the question is, can we use it to learn English? If you find it helpful to hear language in a different way to kind of help you remember, it may be a good idea. But how do we do this? I think it's pretty simple. We have some language we want to learn, and we want to include that language as lyrics in songs. That's what we want to do, right? We create a song with the lyrics. Now, I got this idea from, I believe Juan suggested the idea. So inspiration from there. I want to try it out. Now, I think we're different. We have different personalities, and some people like to be inspired by music and listen to music, and it might help you retain or remember something better if you hear it as part of a song. You know, it would be a lot harder to remember A, B, C, D without the song, I think. But as soon as when you learn it as a song, it sticks more easily, right? We tend to learn things better. We tend to memorize things better. Things tend to stick better when they have a rhythm, when they have a beat, when they have a melody, right? Instead of just remembering a bunch of words or a bunch of letters. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, might take me a while. But if it's A, B, C, D, then, okay, I can remember it more easily. I'm curious, let me know in the comments, but how did you learn LMNOP? Did you learn it as LMNOP or L-M-N-O-P. L-M-N-O-P. I used to think that L-M-N-O-P was one of the letters. So what we do is we go to create here, and we're going to click on this, and we got basically a prompt window. A prompt window. We could do an instrumental song or not. Instrumental means no lyrics, but we want lyrics in this case. Now here's the prompt I'm going to use. Let's just do these. Okay, that's why I was shorter. I accidentally pasted something I didn't want to paste. Let me quickly fix this. I want to add a couple more words. So I'm going to choose, I've already done one of these, so I'll play the first one that I did, but I want a modern country song with the following. So the country is the genre. And burn the midnight oil, bite the bullet, over it, full of yourself, the ball is in your court. These are some idioms that I want to learn. Ameliorate, ubiquitous, obfuscate, ephemeral, and ineffable. Maybe these are some advanced vocabulary words that I'm learning. And I want to try to remember these words. I lose them so easily. So I want to try to create a song. And it'll automatically create 2 songs. But while those are being created, let's listen to the 2 songs I created earlier. Same words, same idioms. Okay?
Got dreams to uncoil. Bite the bullet now. Gonna show you how. Over it, my friend. Full of yourself again. The ball is in your court. Give it one last shot. This love, ubiquitous above.
The ball is it's actually making it make sense. It's not just saying them. It's actually putting it into a real song and using the words and phrases in the real song. Okay, let's listen to the other version. I think the second version is more clear. The voice is a little more clear. Ameliorate this love, ubiquitous above. That's actually pretty poetic. That's not bad. Obfuscate the dark. I like that too. That's really good. Okay, looks like we've got our country songs. So let's try the same with our country songs here. Very country.
Spend my nights just burning in the midnight oil. Dreams all tangled up. Life's a constant tour. Got
burning, okay.
bite the bullet, fight to make it right. Underneath those stars, I'm ready for the fight. You say I'm over it, but you're so full of yourself.
You say I'm over it, but you're so full of yourself. That's a good one. We have full of yourself as one of our idioms.
Words ring hollow, just dust upon the shelf. Now the ball is in your court, take your aim and shoot.
The ball is in your court, take your aim and shoot. That's pretty good. That is pretty good.
Love's ephemeral, like morning's golden fruit. You say I'm over it, but you're so full of yourself. Your words ring hollow, just dust upon the shelf. Now the ball is in your court, take your aim and shoot. Our love's ephemeral, like morning's golden fruit. I'm alone, there ain't this heartache.
That's crazy. That's really good. All right, let's listen to the second version.
Spend my nights just burning the midnight oil. Dreams all tangled up, life's a constant tour. Gotta bite the bullet, fight to make it right. Underneath those stars, I'm ready for the fight. You say I'm over it, but you're so full of yourself.
Okay, that's the same line. You say I'm over it, but you're so full of yourself. It's actually doing a really good job, not just putting them down randomly. It doesn't sound random. It's doing a really good job making it work in a sort of a context that makes sense, right? I can actually feel like I'm listening. It sounds like a real country song.
Your words ring hollow, just dust upon the shelf. Now the ball is in your court, take your aim and shoot.
Again, the ball is in your court, take your aim and shoot makes perfect sense, I think, as a lyric.
Our love's ephemeral, like morning's golden fruit.
Our love's ephemeral like morning's golden fruit. Okay, that works for me, yeah.
Ameliorate this heartache.
Ameliorate this heartache, yep.
Make it something sweet. In a world so ubiquitous, our lives will maybe meet.
Okay, in a world so ubiquitous, I don't think that one works. Because the world, you wouldn't describe the world as ubiquitous. Ubiquitous is about a thing that's so common that you find it everywhere. And the world is usually something where there are many of those things, right? Starbucks, it seems like, are ubiquitous in big cities. But the world usually isn't described as ubiquitous.
No time to obfuscate. Let's bare our hearts and cry.
No time to obfuscate. Yeah, so obfuscate would be to hide something or disguise it. There's no time to do that. I think that's good.
For love so ineffable, the words can never lie. That old clock keeps ticking, but I ain't hearing sound. Just the beat of my own heart up high and all around. We've been through the fire, came out stronger still. But shadows of our doubts, they always seem to chill.
Wow. I gotta say, that's really good. So, I mean, unless you don't like country songs, but if you do, I think that would really work. I use this for background music for projects, and so that's how I've been using it recently, and it's actually pretty good at that as well. If you want, I don't know, creepy things, creepy music, quiet lo-fi, nostalgic. Pretty cool. Oh. Hello. Creepy. This is the one I used. I really like this one. I've actually listened to this just because I like it since I've created it. So it creates music that's actually legitimately good, which is pretty amazing. That's actually a nice sort of song to listen to. Pretty cool. Anyway, so try this out, Suno.com. You can do suno.com/create. Play around with it. Try different genres, try different lengths of words and phrases. Play around with it with it as a sort of a learning tool. See if it helps you remember or not. I'm very curious because I think it really depends on the person. For me, I probably wouldn't learn languages with music because it just doesn't work for me. But I can see how it could be a good way, right? If that's your if that's kind of your natural learning style, I can see how it would work well. Actually, let's try this. Let's try one as a children's song, because often children's songs are very catchy. Let's see. I think I still have some credits left, so this should work. I just have the free version. I don't pay for it. Let's say a very catchy children's song with the following words. Let's say a very catchy children's song to teach the following words. Okay, so I want a children's song that teaches ameliorate, ubiquitous, obfuscate, ephemeral, and ineffable. And let's try this one. I haven't tried this before, so this is very, very experimental. Will it work? Will it work? Magic words. I'm pretty blown away by the country song. All right, let's see what we've got here. Children's pop, playful.
Magic words we'll learn today in a catchy, fun-filled way. They'll help you sound so bright with magic words in sight. Ameliorate, make it better. Ubiquitous, it's everywhere, all together.
Okay, it's trying to give the definitions. I think it's trying to give the definitions in the song. Not great. This is better. It sounds more like a kid's song.
Magic words we'll learn today in a catchy, fun-filled way. They'll help you sound so bright with magic words in sight. Ameliorate, make it better. Ubiquitous, it's everywhere, all together. Obfuscate, make it hard to see. These magic words just for you and me.
Okay, it's giving definitions. It's easier to hear. The first one is hard to hear.
Ephemeral just for a while, ineffable beyond a smile. Use these words every day in your own unique way.
Okay, that's not bad, I have to say. That's definitely better. It's more catchy. I can hear the lyrics better. It helps me. It gives the word and then the definition in a simple way. Interesting. Juan has shared, wake up, get out of bed, start your day, put on your shoes, don't be late, no way. Grab your coffee, head out the door, get on the road, it's time to explore. Okay, that sounds like a good lyric. Good context, yes. We can ask ChatGPT to add meanings and make sure it rhymes well with idioms. Well, I'm not sure that it's necessary. I mean, I think that Suno seems to be doing that too pretty well, where it's actually integrating it into a song format, right? So I feel like it's actually, it does a pretty good job by itself. One thing is that the window or the description is pretty short, so you only have 200 characters to use, so it's not a lot. It's not a lot. Anyway, check that out. Let me know what you think. I'm very curious. If you have any tips for doing it, it's a very new thing, right? It's hard to say. A lot of this stuff is very, very experimental. So I think it's important to play around and try stuff, though. It certainly can't hurt. So play around with it. It's free. Why not? Why not? Okay. Okay. Yeah, this website is pretty cool. Genius. It's got a lot of interesting little features. So in the charts, you've got, let's see, here's that new Lady Gaga song with Bruno Mars. I had to say, okay, why is this highlighted? Okay, no interesting comment there. It's supposed to have context. So I'ma love you every night like it's the last night, like it's the last night. In Silk Sonic's The Super Duo composed a Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak album, there's a song called After Last Night featuring Bootsy Collins and Thundercat. It talks about the story of how a man's trying to get the woman he met and had the night with the day before. Okay. So some just interesting sort of context, which is useful. In these lines, the couple is arguing. I think they said, I don't even want to do this anymore. It's referring to the argument, not a breakup. They're saying they don't want to argue because they know they love each other. And this can go with the theme of loving each other like there's no tomorrow. Ooh, lost in the woods. Woods, what am I saying? Words that we scream. I don't even want to do this anymore because you already know what you mean to me. Okay. And you can listen to, Apple allows you to listen to it. I don't know, I'll probably not be able to, but. So I'ma love you every night like it's... Yeah, you can listen to it. I'm not going to play it though. For obvious reasons. All right. Let's see. What do I have coming up next here? A couple things. I want to go through a video here. There is a great YouTube channel. It's called the BBC Archive, and they have old interviews, a lot of stuff that you just wouldn't see in your main algorithm usually, and it's pretty cool. I love watching these videos because you can see how people used to talk. Okay, so we're not going to watch this whole thing, but I want to just get a sense for how people used to talk and what's different now. So we'll do some comparisons between how people talk now and how they used to talk. I'll just basically say, okay, I think I would say this now. This is modern English, or this is kind of outdated. This is what somebody used to say, right? I'm not going to make too many points on pronunciation because I'm an American, and these two ladies speaking in this video, they're talking about the 1890s. So they were interviewed in the 60s or 70s, and they're talking about the 1890s and what it was like then. So some of their language surely is coming from then, but some of their descriptions in language surely is modern because, well, they probably have changed over time how they speak, right? So this is just interesting. It's very interesting. We're going to move through it pretty quickly. I don't think we'll listen to the whole thing, but I do want to just add some comments throughout because it's fascinating.
I was a very weedy, thin, skinny, anemic child.
Anemic child. Okay, that has nothing to do with being skinny necessarily, right? Anemia is a medical condition.
Always what the boys called a grizzle guts. And then that went on until I was near 17. And then one day my brother said to me, "What?"
Guzzle guts. Guzzle guts. That's a song. Guzzle guts. Idioms by the Free Dictionary. A real guzzle guts. Guzzle guts slang. Someone apt to consume large quantities of alcohol. But she didn't say guzzle guts though. She said goozle guts. I wonder if that's different. I've never heard this before in my life. Goozle guts? Guzzle guts or goozle guts? Guzzle guts. The only thing I'm able to come up with is guzzle guts, which is about drinking a lot of alcohol. Okay. I don't know what that has to do with being skinny.
Why don't you go and get something to do, not go mooning about the place? So I couldn't think of anything I could do, but he said he'd been down Victoria Street and he had looked in a great big shop window there, and there they had some sort of little machine, and some ladies were...
Mooning about, by the way, means to move around slowly. This is the official definition here. To move around slowly or spend time without a clear purpose, often due to unhappiness. For example, he was mooning about the place because he was sad. Okay, just for context there.
Working this machine, and he understood they were called typewriters. And he said if I went round there and found out, see what they were doing, because it said in the window, students taken. So I went round one morning, and this very...
I think for modern English, if we're talking about a potential job or a position, you wouldn't say students taken. You'd probably say students accepted, which is the same thing. I mean, same meaning. But I think it might be more common on a hiring advertisement to say students welcome, students accepted. Maybe welcome or accepting. Accepted would both be common. Taken, probably not. But the same meaning. Exactly the same.
Nice owner interviewed me and said, what did I want to do? And I said I'd like to come and see, and if I could learn to do what she was doing, which was typing. And I'd only been there about 4 or 5 months, and she put me on the staff, and I received this big sum of 8 shillings a week.
How much is 8 shillings a week? How much is 8 shillings? 8 shillings, let's see, conversion. How much is 8 shillings in dollars? 8 shillings to US dollars. Let's see. 8 shillings to US dollars convert. Yeah, just curious. Hello? Okay, this is not working. Maybe it's doing a different shilling. All right, I'll have to look that up later. How much is 8 shillings?
This is the typewriter I used to sit in the window with and type on, and the crowds outside used to be still looking, all waiting to see what I was doing. And after a time, some of the offices started having typewriters and engaging girls as their sort of clerks.
A whole new world was opening up for women. But in the 1890s, many young Victorians were still living sheltered lives. Berta Ruck was at a girls' school in North Wales.
The headmistress at the school had me up.
Headmistress, I think, is still common in the UK. Like Dumbledore is the headmaster, I believe. In America, we use principal. The high school will have a principal. Often for a university, it's not called a principal, it's called a dean. Sometimes president, sometimes dean, or sometimes there's a president and a dean, and it's kind of confusing what the relationship is. But headmaster and headmistress, I think, are still common in the UK, but please correct me if I'm wrong. But I know that in Harry Potter, Dumbledore is called the headmaster. The value of 8 shillings in 1905, accounting for average annual inflation of 3%, would be approximately £13 in 2024. Okay, so 13 pounds, 8 shillings a week. So imagine making £13. That's not a lot for a week. You certainly couldn't live on that today.
She said, "You are an indolent and feckless girl."
Indolent and feckless. I love how she talks, by the way. And I love how she's dressed. Indolent is like lazy. Lazy. Indolent. You don't want to move, right? And feckless is sort of like you're inefficient. You're ineffective at doing things, right? You're not good at things.
You are drawing in your exercise book when you ought to be concentrating on your work. Because, child, what are we put into this world for? And I looked at her and said, sometimes I don't think any of us know.
Ooh, that's a very deep comment. Probably true.
And she looked at me, and in that moment there was contact between us. Strange. But she immediately became the headmistress and said, to prepare, dear, prepare for what we are going to do. And of course I didn't know what I was going to do. I went on being a feckless and indolent girl, and presently when I left school... I'm going to have to
start using those words, because those are great words to know, but they're not common, right? Feckless and indolent. I'm going to have to start using them more. Maybe not on my son, but when I see other kids and I want to... Son, look at those feckless and indolent children. Don't be like them.
My father said, I don't know what we shall do with Berta. She wouldn't be any use.
There's a shall that's common, maybe more common here. I don't know if it's generally in the UK or just more of an older thing, but we use shall a lot less. What shall we do? You can say it. It's not incorrect. You will still hear people, modern day people, say it. But I think more people are going to say, what should we do? So should, especially in modern American speech, has replaced shall. It used to be shall. Everyone would say, what shall we do? Shall we go here? People still say it. To be clear, you still hear people say, shall we go to the mall this weekend? But it's becoming less and less common and more common to say, should we go to the mall this weekend, right? Instead of shall. Just a small point there.
Berta wouldn't be any use at anything but drawing. She had better go somewhere where they talk about drawing all the time and are drawing, nothing but drawing. She'd better go to London. So I went.
And she found lodgings.
She seems like a cool person. I like her personality. I like the way that she talks. And I like her sense of humor.
With an aunt in Lambeth. She went to the School of Art there, and later to the Slade. This was the London she found.
Mud everywhere. Of course, hansom cabs slurring through the mud.
Slurring through the mud. What's a hansom cab? So a hansom cab is, well, it's a cab drawn by a horse, a carriage. Let me see. I mean, I guess there. I was going to pull up a picture, but there it is. So a hansom cab would be a modern-day taxi, but drawn by or pulled by a horse. And it was often just called, if you read, Sherlock Holmes or something, a hansom. Get a hansom or hop in a hansom. They hopped in the hansom and headed downtown. Something like that. The hansom is talking about the carriage or the cab.
And where there wasn't mud, there was fog, and in between was us enjoying ourselves.
It probably wasn't fog in 1890. They had really bad, well, maybe it was, but they had a really bad smog problem. I believe especially starting in the maybe 1850s, the amount of coal burning that was happening, especially in the winter, was so severe. The pollution was unbelievably bad in London especially. And fog maybe, but also pretty dirty.
But I do remember the buses of that time. The great thing was to get in front by the driver, where you had a lovely view on the street and everything as you went by. Everybody wore hats, of course. Over there, profuse underclothes, which was...
Profuse underclothes. So they had a lot of undergarments, and compared to now, that's sort of a big part of the outfit. Profuse underclothes. We wouldn't say underclothes now, we would say undergarment sometimes. If it's specifically, I guess, the main thing that you wear under your clothes, underwear. Underwears often refers to just the bottoms, right? But sometimes it refers to everything underneath, depending on who you're talking to, but often just refers to the bottoms that you would wear under your clothes. Profuse undergarments would not be a common description, but maybe that's because we don't wear profuse undergarments anymore. And everyone was wearing hats at the time, which is something I wish would come back. I feel like modern culture has moved, and I've said this about language, modern culture has moved really far away from formality and far toward casual in every way. So if you looked out on the street in 1890 or 1910 in the UK, in London, in New York, you would see people wearing suits, people wearing top hats, people wearing ties. If you go outside in New York now, it's mostly, yoga pants, sweatpants, streetwear. I'm not complaining about that, but there are certain aspects where sometimes it would be cool if there was more diversity in what's acceptable in terms of casual, formal, clothes included, but also language. So the way that we speak now is we don't have two modes. It used to be there was a public speaking mode where you would speak very carefully and you would use great oration and you would try to be as eloquent as possible, and there's a whole art to how you speak. Whereas, and then you would have your casual mode too, your at-home spoken style or around friends where you would just speak casually. So sort of two modes, very clearly delineated. But now the line has been blurred and it's skewed much further toward only casual. So people just talk like this all the time, and that's how they talk. And they don't really focus on being like very articulate, and they just say kind of what they want to say, whatever pops into their brains, and like that's pretty much normal. And really, there aren't that many like negative consequences to kind of like not being very careful with not being careful with how you say things, and not really like putting a lot of effort into it. So I'm not against that. I think it's fine, but I also would really appreciate if there were a different mode where when you're speaking and there's a value to being clear. And I'm not saying using formal words, right, and being very articulate and locucious and using very long vocabulary words, right, like pusillanimous or something. But I am saying I think there is value to another mode where you're trying to speak clearly as an effort, as a thing you're striving toward. I think that there's value there. Now, I get a chance to do that regularly because I need to communicate clearly, because I'm talking to non-native English speakers. But actually, I want to talk like this most of the time, except in, very casual settings, and I think that there's value to having both. Could you please try the British accent? My British accent is not very good, unfortunately. I often get confused between the British accent in Australia, and I get lost. I get lost in a kind of limbo. It's awful. It's terrible. And then I realize that this way of speaking is not very realistic. It's awful. That's about all I can do.
Still ago, they wore long skirts and had to be held up out of the mud. But
they wore long skirts and had to be held up out of the mud. Okay. I could try to copy her.
But, of course, we spent hours. When I think of the hours we spent brushing our skirts, of course, they had underneath a dreadful thing.
Of course, they had underneath a dreadful thing
called, what was it? It was the braid under the skirt, which was sort of horsehair, and it was supposed to take up all the mud, but it didn't. We were very often mud to our knees, spattered. And
it's crazy how, in 100 years, how far things go. I mean, yes, New York City is still disgusting in some ways. There's trash everywhere and rats in the subway, but it's amazing how far we go, and we don't notice every little step. But if you zoom forward 100 years, we're not walking around in mud in a big city. This is London in the 1890s, up to your knees in mud. Horses everywhere, probably horse poop everywhere, having to brush your clothes. It's amazing how far we come and how little we pay attention to or notice those massive changes. A massive change that happens in 100 years. You don't even pay attention to it because there's no you don't see it, right? In a single 10-year period, big things happen, I think, but you don't notice it. Like, think about what happened between 2000 and 2010. The internet became much more popular. Google, YouTube, social media, right? Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram. I think Instagram I think that was maybe 2009. When did Instagram come out? But that much happened in that 10-year period. It's crazy. And it just feels natural. And yet if you were to jump forward, it would blow your mind.
And that had to be brushed off, of course, before we went out again. Hours we spent over that. There was, of course, that was a sort of...
She's using, of course, a lot. Of course.
time that nowadays is spent gaily in looking at the telly and all that sort of thing, but ours was...
Americans generally don't say telly. We don't say television either. The full thing. We just say TV usually. The TV. I think in the UK now they might say the tube, the telly, the tube on the they might TV. I don't know. Someone find that out for me.
O'clock when they were out.
No, not the tube. The tube is the subway in London.
And they used to come along the gutter, some of them holding the others up, and singing songs which I embedded in my memory. Do you think I might dare to sing one of them now? One of them was called She May Have Known Better Days When She Was...
She's singing the songs of the drunk people that she remembers from when she was younger. Drunk people would be kicked out of the bars at 10 a.m. and wander through the streets singing these songs.
Was in a prime. She may have known better days once upon a time, when by the roadside she fell. Oh, never possible, some poor...
It's more the pronunciation that's different. A lot of the language he's using is totally ordinary, normal, and some things here, frequency, maybe how often she's using of course, or how often we're hearing shall. But differences maybe pronunciation. Obviously, she's using a Cockney accent there, which is that very strong, exaggerated accent you hear in movies in London. Bert from Mary Poppins, right? But it's amazing to me how similar, of course, how little things change and how much they change at the same time. For example, just between modern British and American English, so much is the same. Obviously, the entire structure and how people speak, but then there are these cultural references which are not the same. So when I'm talking to someone from the UK, if they're talking to someone else, they might make a reference that I don't know. But if they're talking to me, I might understand completely because they're not making those references. So it's interesting how dialects are so similar and yet so different at the same time.
Poor old mother is waiting.
Hey, what happened? I can't hear it.
For hours known better days.
Yeah, that's a Cockney. It's called Cockney. Very famous dialect.
You would get a pint of porter for 3 halfpence. But
What did she say there?
Never possible, some poor old mother is waiting for hours known better days.
Pretty good.
you would get a pint of porter for 3 halfpence.
Oh. A pint of porter. Okay.
But if you had a glass of anything better, brandy or anything like that, that was a bit dearer. But I do...
She doesn't speak as clear. If you have a glass of brandy or something like that, it was a bit dearer. Now, here is an interesting difference. This is not a common way to talk about expensive things. It means it's expensive or it costs a lot, right? But it's not a common way to describe it now. If something is expensive, we'll usually just say it's pricey, right? Ooh, that's pricey. That's steep sometimes. That's expensive, right? And we won't use the word dear usually, although that used to be much more common.
Remember that they used to say that they got quite a good glass of gin for twopence halfpenny. And
I have no idea what she just said. A good glass of gin for twopence halfpenny. Tuppence. Tuppence is from Mary Poppins, so it has something to do with tuppence because Mikel in Mary Poppins wants to give his tuppence to the old lady to feed the birds. I want to feed the birds. And his father, who's a banker, wants him to put his tuppence in the bank, and then they sing a song. Tuppence, tuppence. They sing a song about it. So I know it's money, but I don't know how much money it is. And I don't know... I don't know how much. I don't know what unit it is, or I think it's coins. I don't know. I have no idea.
As I said, there's a very great deal of poverty.
No doubt we did think, oh my God, this is awful. We didn't say so. We never protested. Of course, people worked in factories for about 2 shillings a day, if that. Of course, people all wore hats in the street. Of course, people called each other Miss and Mr. until they were engaged. Of course, there was no such thing as...
Ooh, that's an interesting one. Yeah, that's another one of those not formal sorts of things, right? Imagine you're dating someone for 6 months and you still say, Miss Zhao, would you like to go to dinner with me, please? That's so formal, right? To call someone miss. People don't do that anymore at all.
As anything but, of course.
After saving up some of my 8 shillingses, I was able to have a bicycle. And then came the question about rational dress.
Oh, I was saving up some of my 8 shillingses. Oh, right, because 8 is the amount, right? 8 shillings, so 13 pounds a week. So I think she's saying her weekly pay, she was saving up, and she's describing that as a thing. My 8 shillingses, which is a weird way to say it. So she wants to buy a bike, saving up to buy a bike. Okay.
Well, there was a woman who used to go round Bloomsbury, and she used to go in some very voluminous things, and they were called bloomers. But when our dress came in, we called it rational dress. And there's a photograph I can show you there of myself in the first rational dress. You had a clapping
Rational dress is what this is called. Okay.
thing that wrapped round right down to your knees, and then when you went to go home, you took it off and you folded it up and put it on the back of the bicycle and put your skirts on, because it was never due for the neighbours to see you in what was called a very, very indecent dress.
A very, very indecent dress. I think what she's saying is the dress that goes down to the knees, which is definitely better for riding a bicycle, is considered indecent. And you wouldn't want your neighbors to see you wearing something so indecent as a dress that only goes down to your knees, right? Because I could see her legs. So she's not fully covered. That's interesting. Very conservative. So you would bike home in the sensible dress, then you would pop on your skirts so that your neighbors wouldn't have to say, oh my goodness, she's wearing a dress that goes down to her knees. Unbelievable.
And I was going along one day, and a handsome cab driver looked down and he said, "Don't you want any children?" I was about 18. I don't know whether I replied to or not, but I can't remember. I expect I said something cheeky back.
Cheeky is also a little bit outdated, but people do say it. It's more of a UK thing than an American thing, but I think everybody knows it. Don't be cheeky, right? It's sort of like sassy, sort of like mischievous a little bit. Cheeky, yeah.
And then we used to do quite long drives. We had cushioned tires in those days, and no freewheeling or anything like that. And we'd go down on Saturday afternoon, some of us, down to as far as Brighton or to Worthing, and come back the next day. Well, we'd been cycling one Saturday afternoon, and as we came back over Barnes Common, there were about 8 of us left coming back that way, and the roadway was all up, so we went onto the pathway on our bicycles.
I think by pathway she means the sidewalk. The road was, there was a traffic jam maybe. Cars were filling the road. All up, she said. I'm not familiar with that specific phrasing, all up, but I think she means just a lot of traffic. And then the pathway is maybe a way to say sidewalk or pavement. Americans would say sidewalk.
And they all got through, but I was young and I was right behind. And the policeman stepped right out of this sideway, and I went right into his arms. So about 5 of them came back, and he took all our names and addresses. And I gave my address as the office, and not my home address. And we all had summonses. And then one day we were...
that is used. A summons means you have to, for example, you have to come to court, or it's a legal thing that you have to do, right? You have a summons.
All told to come up to Barnes Court, police court, and there were 3 or 4 men sitting on the magistrates' benches and asking all sorts of things. And so one old man near the end got up and he put his hand up and he said, "Were the ladies on horseback?" So the clerk of the court said, "No, sir, on bicycles." "Oh," he said, very disgusted.
Disgusted. Not appropriate for women to ride bicycles, I guess.
We were all fined 5 shillings each. Well, I hadn't got 5 shillings in those days, and they paid my fine for me, and we all came away, and that's all I ever heard about it. But it was a very amusing story, and I've remembered it all my life.
I would not... Amusing? Yeah. I guess that's common. Sindra, some of these words that she's saying are kind of there, like cheeky, amusing. People still say them, but they're not so common, you know. Not dying out, but they're just maybe less common now than they used to be.
The way he said, "Ooh."
Oh. Cheeky. Yeah. So yeah, check out BBC. Check out the BBC archive. It's really cool. There's so many interesting things there. Maybe we'll pick out some of those things sometimes. But I'm still working on this, on the format of I want to balance it so that for the podcast that it's kind of just a balance of not hanging out, but sharing interesting things or things I've been watching that I like, but also sharing useful English tips, and also, talking about specific words and phrases, which we didn't really do today, but we will do on a regular basis. And I don't know, just feedback is welcome. So let me know the kinds of things that you appreciate, the kind of things that you like me to talk about and share. I obviously want to share stuff that you find interesting and valuable, that you like, right? So yeah, if something is boring or if something is interesting or something is useful or not useful, let me know. I'm just experimenting with stuff and sharing stuff, but feedback is always welcome. All right. Hey, Mary McCain is here. Wow, yeah, we're just about to wrap it up, Mary. You're late. You're late. So I think that'll do it. Mary, do you have anything important you'd like to say before we call it a day here while I take a sip of ice cold coffee? No pressure. Speak, pal. It's interesting. All right. Well, that's all for me. If I didn't get to anything, make sure to hold that for next time. Check out the Suno thing for making songs. Check out, what was it again? Genius for looking up lyrics. Check out my GPT. Play with that. I think that's pretty cool. Let me know if it works for you. Let me know if you have any feedback to improve it. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you have a fantastic week. Check out the free course in the links in the description. Besides the GPT, the Discord community, if you like. If you want to listen, you can do that in the links in the description. If you're listening and you want to watch, you can do that in the links in the description. And you can get 30% off the yearly membership, paid monthly for the first 12 months, which I think is an incredible deal. Updated topics like AI, you got it. That's my favorite thing to talk about anyway. So, all right. Thanks for joining. I appreciate it. Have a fantastic one. Good weekend. Great weekend. Fantastic rest of the week. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.